Hey, what's up? It's Comic95 the Savior, and for this video, I kind of want to remake a video that I've previously made before, in which I will be talking to you about the importance of learning Japanese language in order to come to Japan or advance here. Now, first and foremost, I already know that this is a sensitive topic for people that are obsessed with Japan and or that don't have money, and well, I guess this helps you to procrastinate, but my purpose in this video is not to bash you and make you feel bad about yourself and or make you feel like you wasted your money or wasted your time or that I'm better than you or anything else like that. But I figured that since I remade my video on about can you come to Japan, without a degree, do you need a degree? And while most people understood that video, I definitely had comments and emails from people like, oh, you're so mean. You don't have to be blunt. You don't have to do whatever. And it's like, I don't understand what's not understood. We're all adults here. And again, I was in your shoes too. I was not born with a bachelor's degree. I was not born with the money to come to Japan. I had to work my ass off to get here. So I'm not talking to you from a perspective where I had everything handed to me and I can't relate to you. Rather, I'm trying to save you time and even money. So, if you have not watched those two videos, I highly suggest that you check them out either after this video or before and then come back, or finish this video, like I said, and then, watch those afterwards. So, this video is going to get long because I want to cover everything, but I'm tired of being asked this question because some people do send me messages, unfortunately, on Instagram as well as Twitter, asking me for my thoughts and opinion, and it's like, guys, I literally have YouTube videos that already answer this. But I'm going to make another video in which I will break it down more and try to basically restate what I already said in comments, but I guess I didn't say in my video, so that this way I guess I don't get asked these questions as often. I'm sorry, there's like a hair on my face. So anyway, I broke everything down into several different points. I actually wrote down a list of 3 main points that I want to highlight to keep myself on subject, because you guys know I can talk like right now. I'm already 3 minutes in basically. So I want to start with number 1, the very first thing, talking to Japanese people. Now, again, of course, you are going to get most of your practice and experience from talking to Japanese people, really just in your day-to-day life, like going to the grocery store, getting on the train, asking for help at a store, etc. But to be totally honest, it is not needed. I came to Japan with no Japanese ability whatsoever. I had never taken Japanese classes before. Everything I knew came from like YouTube. I tried to cram in and watch as much of Japanese Pop 101 as I could. I bought several books, which they all I was like reading it, but like not learning anything from it. I didn't memorize anything. And it got so bad that on my very first day here, you guys, I said this before in several different videos, I actually forgot how to say thank you in Japanese. I forgot what I ended up saying to my taxi driver, because I had a really awesome taxi driver that went above and beyond for me, which I'm so grateful for, but that's for another video. So anyway, my point is not to say that you don't need to learn Japanese, but you're not going to really use it as often as you think you do. Like, Japanese is not like how English is. In America, you pretty much can't get around without English ability, although technically you kind of can too, because we have a lot of stuff in Spanish as well. But in Japan, like, English is available 100 times more than Spanish options are in the US. So wrap your mind around that for a second. So anything of importance is going to be in English. This is not to tell you to not study or learn Japanese, but rather to not prioritize it if you're really trying to get here and you have in your mind, I can't work in Japan, I can't date in Japan, I can't study here because my Japanese language is not high enough. I promise you, if you make an effort, you will definitely learn a lot, if not become completely fluent, like myself, upon actually moving here. So do not get discouraged. Do not feel like, you can't come here because you don't have the money for lessons, or you don't have the right materials, or you don't have the time to learn. You don't need to do that. I promise you. In fact, just to remind you, the vast majority of people that you guys watch on YouTube cannot speak Japanese. And a lot of people that claim they can are liars. They don't know Japanese very well. They know a couple of sentences, but if you were to talk to them in person, their language ability is 0. So keep that in mind. A lot of the YouTubers that you watch, etc., on here that are foreigners that have even been here for like 10 plus years, 5 plus years, whatever, they have very, very, very minimal Japanese skills or none at all, and they're doing just fine here. So again, you don't need it. Is it nice to have? Yeah, sure. But that's where I get into my next point. All staying on point number 1 about talking to people. It's really for yourself. Japanese language ability is more useful for yourself for, of course, making friends, dating, etc. Although even then you don't need it, because people, generally speaking, because you're a foreigner, they are going to insist on speaking talking to you in English because they want to practice English with you. It's not just for Americans. Any foreigner here is assumed that you speak English natively. And if you speak another language, even better. They'll ask you to teach them that language because they've probably never tried to learn it. For example, if you speak French, Italian, German, Dutch, anything else, they're going to want to learn that from you. And even if you insist on speaking Japanese, you would normally find yourself having to pressure people and be like, no, I can speak Japanese, or I want to speak or practice my Japanese. We're not going to talk in English. I still have to do that to this day with people, and it's so annoying. So yeah, just letting you know, you definitely don't need it to date here or make friends or anything like that. It's all a lie. Is it helpful and nice? Yeah, but more so for you. The only thing knowing Japanese is going to do, you'll impress Japanese people. You'll impress your boyfriend, your date. You'll impress anybody that hears you speak it. They're going to be like, oh, wow. I mean, even if you just say hi, I will never forget. I think I gave this example in a video, maybe not. One of my first students that I had, my very first female student that I had when I was a student myself in Tokyo. I was on my way, or was I ending the lesson? I was leaving from the lesson with her, and we were walking back to the station together, and she ran into one of her, I think, old, like, college classmates or whatever, and she was introducing me to her, and all I did was introduce myself in Japanese, you guys, and she, like, freaked out. And even although I'm speaking to her in Japanese, she literally asked my Japanese friend, can she speak Japanese? Oh my God, is she a foreigner? Is she half? And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I'm talking to you in Japanese, why won't you ask me these questions directly? You seriously just ask, and I get it because she knew the girl, but look at how rude that is. That would be the U.S. equivalent of me, because I do have Hispanic friends in the U.S. I have a Mexican friend, Erica. If I were to go and, I don't know, meet one of Erica's friends, I run into Erica at Walmart, and Erica's friend, Alejandra, whatever, she speaks to me in English, and I freak out, and I say, oh, Erica, she can speak English? Did you teach her? Look at how rude, offensive, and ignorant that would be. Okay, well, as a black woman, I'm used to this stuff, and I honestly wasn't really fazed by it. I understand that she meant well, but it was ignorant. My point isn't to get on Japanese people for that, but rather to tell you, people will be super impressed with super minimal Japanese. Back then, I couldn't even speak Japanese fluently, might I add. I just knew a little bit because I was taking, again, university classes in Japanese. It was not because I was some scholar and, passed the N1 back then. That was definitely not the case at that time. However, of course, now I know significantly more, but I'm talking about back then. So with that said, that's just one of many examples. People are impressed with mediocrity. If you just say, nice to meet you in Japanese, I swear people here freak out if you can just say that and tell them how old you are. So I'm not saying for you to stop because of that, stop learning because of that, but rather to tell you that people are impressed with the bare minimum because they think that Japanese is hard to learn. But in my opinion, Japanese language is not hard to learn. It's actually very easy. The hard part is learning how to read and write it, which is nearly impossible because of how kanji works. But that's a whole nother story. So anyway, my point is Japanese is really just going to benefit you in your day-to-day life. For you going to the store, you getting on the train, you asking for directions. It will not really be necessary because even doing all of those things, there's an English translation on the train, there's English translations on maps, there's English translations on ticket machines, there's English translations on even like the food and stuff you buy is normally, it's not even translated, it's normally written in English, and stuff is just super self-explanatory here. When you meet people, they're going to feel more pressure to be trying to speak to you in English versus worrying about, your ability to speak Japanese. They'll freak out and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, my English is so bad, even while you're speaking to them in Japanese. So again, keep all of that in mind. I'm not telling you not to learn Japanese, but I'm saying why it's not needed, because literally, I promise you, I know it's a stereotype that Japanese people can't speak English, but I promise you it's just a cultural thing because they don't say that they can do something because they want to be humble, whatever. Basically, they lie to you. Most people here actually can speak or understand English. If they can't understand it verbally, they can understand it if you write it to them. And let's be real, guys, we have Google Translate, smartphones. It's not perfect, but it's enough to get the point across whatever you're trying to say or tell someone or ask someone, etc. It was a lifesaver for me in Tokyo. I still use it every once in a while now. So again, not trying to teach you to be ignorant, which is what some people jumped to a conclusion and got from that, but rather to tell you it is not a need. Is it nice to have? Yes. Is it a need? No. Should you study and learn? Yes. Should you prioritize that for getting here? No. Money is much more important. Once again, your Japanese language skills are not going to get you, a $200,000 scholarship where it's going to pay for all 4 years. Doesn't work that way. You need to work and make your own cash to get here. Okay, so now that we got number one out of the way, which is the fact, that Japanese really just helps you with communicating with people, but isn't a need for that, because again, people will prefer all the time. I won't even say, I will argue that it's not even 9 out of 10. It's more like 10 out of 10 times, but fine. 9 out of 10 times, people will prefer to speak to you in English. And you'll almost never have someone that consistently speaks to you in Japanese. They'll normally still try to throw in some English to get some practice in. And it's cool to show off that you have a foreign friend. And it shows that, oh, they must have a high level of, English because they're hanging out with a foreigner. And yeah, that's a whole nother story. So, moving on to point number 2, education. Very, very commonly asked question on Instagram that I get from people is, do I need to learn Japanese, or what level do I need in order to go to college here, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, depending on what school you're going to, it might be necessary to have some Japanese proficiency if you're planning to go to a legitimate Japanese university. So, if you are planning to go to a legitimate Japanese university, meaning that this is not a international, campus such as LUJ, Temple, or even Japanese international schools such as KUFS, Kyoto University here, Kyoto University of Foreign Studies, if I recall. If you're not trying to go to a school like, those schools and others as well, any school that's really English based or, has a lot of international classes or a course for foreigners, if you're trying to get into one of those type of schools, you generally need to have basically like an N2, N3 type level or higher. And as I've said before, it's really not worth it, because the amount of money that you're going to pay for these schools isn't worth the degree that you get, especially if you are a native English speaker. It doesn't do you any good, but I'll get into that in my next step. So, long story short, you do not need to know Japanese in order to go to university here. Almost all schools, especially the bigger ones here, they have a course that is designed both for foreign students that want to study abroad in Japan and for Japanese students that want to get some type of degree in international studies like my actual boyfriend has. So, with that said, generally, these schools don't care about your Japanese level because your classes are going to almost all be in English, with the exception of whatever language course you take and possibly some type of elective or whatever, basically something that doesn't matter. But your courses will be in English, even although you are going to a Japanese school. So with that said, you don't need Japanese for that. And on top of that, it's a disservice to yourself. Japan, like pretty much every country on this earth, they value American degrees over Japanese ones. And the reason being is Japanese schools are actually super relaxed, believe it or not. I've said this in another video before, but their grading system is less harsh, they don't get as much homework, and attendance is not taken as seriously as it is in the US. There's a lot of freedom here in comparison to American schools. So it's also seen as though you are smarter because it implies that you're bilingual, because from a Japanese perspective, it implies that you're bilingual, that you have money, and that you're very intelligent if you can, go to an American university and graduate from there. So there's literally no reason why you shouldn't want to get a degree from the US too. I understand that as an American or any other foreigner, you're like, oh, I want to go to school in Japan, I want to be around Japanese people, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to get that anime-like experience, guys. Like, you're not going to be wearing those little school uniforms. This isn't high school. And on top of that, again, you're paying serious money, and a lot of you guys are putting yourselves in debt. Sorry, I live next to a park. I said this before. There's like screaming going on. Why are there kids at the park and it's late at night? Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, so you really don't need to have Japanese language skills at all to go to school here. It's not worth it. It doesn't, excuse that scream. It doesn't help you get into school here or anything else like that. They're not going to ask for that. The schools that do require you to have a certain level of testing for Japanese, to be totally honest with you, the amount of work and money that you're going to spend to obtain that level of fluency isn't worth it, because you're going to go through all of that, spend all of that time, all of that money, and by the time that you do sign up for classes, you've already put yourself in debt or wasted a ton of money to gain Japanese proficiency, and then you're going to add on to that by signing up for university classes. And that brings me into my next one, number 3, your job options. This is the most commonly asked question, probably more than anything else. People always ask me, what can I do besides teaching? Where can I work at? This, that, and the other. And I've definitely been in your shoes before. So I want to kind of, again, reiterate what I've already said before. I understand that not everyone wants to be a teacher, but the reality is teaching jobs pay way more than almost any, in fact, I would say more than any position that you can get here that requires Japanese language proficiency. I've talked about this in other videos before, but once again, Pretty much any job that you get here, if they're hiring you because you're a foreigner, not because you can speak Japanese. I know it hurts, but the only reason why they want Japanese language ability is so that they can communicate with you as their employee more easily. But you're more than likely only going to be used to communicate with foreigners. So for example, if you work at a real estate company and you can speak Japanese, you will almost never really be dealing with Japanese clientele, because unless they're just, want you to help them because they're fast, they're like, oh, like there's a foreigner, or you're hot or something, you're dealing with the opposite sex. Generally speaking, most people are going to be put off. Japan is racist, like I said, when it comes to this. Prejudice, excuse me. And people will not want to work with you. They would rather have the Japanese person help them, which I can't blame them on that. I have mixed feelings towards this, but that's another story. We're not getting in on my opinion. I'm telling you the facts. The reality is you will be working with foreign clients, not Japanese. And you also need to come to the conclusion or accept the fact that generally speaking, even if it's a company that's not like a real estate, agency or something like that, they're hiring you to specifically work with their foreign, division, basically. You're basically the person that can speak English should help be needed. They're not using you so much for your Japanese language skills. And those type of companies that do, that was my point I was going to make. Those type of companies that do hire you, they normally don't pay much to begin with. And on top of that, my point that I was trying to make, like I said, is the fact that, again, it's racist. There's no way of going around this. And this is the part that I don't agree with or have mixed feelings on. Japanese companies don't want to hire foreigners. They don't. The ones that do hire foreigners are ones that are really international companies. So they're not a normal Japanese company. As normal as it may seem, it might have a lot of characteristics of a real Japanese company, but there's no nice way of putting this. Long story short, a real Japanese company does not hire foreigners. They don't work with you. If they work with foreigners, they're no longer Japanese. They run like an international company by Japanese standards, at least. That's going to be a hard, tough pill to swallow. I know I stepped on a lot of people's toes, hurt your little feelings, whatever, but I'm being 100% honest with you. It's facts. There are things that definitely mimic and imitate what it's like at a normal company, but it'll never truly be the same because, again, you're working at a company that's willing to work with you. And no matter how well you might think you speak Japanese, you'll never be able to read and write it at their level for your appropriate age. There is someone out there that can do that, was born abroad, just came to Japan and, mastered Japanese in X amount of time. But I promise you, I have yet to meet even one single person. Like even I'm not going to get into that whole thing with you all because y'all gonna get on me for that part. But just being real, like even the people here that are mixed race, unfortunately, their parents spent too much time, talking to them in English, hanging out with the English parent, whatever. And I find that they even have an accent when they speak in Japanese. Or number two, the more, likely one to go, add into that as well. They either have a weird Japanese accent or they also, don't know Japanese at the level that they should for their age. I cannot tell you how many students I've had just, on a lower level where you would think it'd be easier for them to be on track for their age, teaching, kids that were, half Japanese. And it's like, your kid doesn't know this, really? Like, okay, I know this, and, they've been in Japan longer than I have, but whatever. So I'm not going to get into that. My point is, a lot of those companies where you're like, oh, I really want to get a job here. This is my dream job. I want to do this, that, and the other. They're looking for a Japanese person, not a foreigner to fill that role. There's too many issues to go through. There's too many risks. They have to not only, worry about, I see I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me say it anyway. They don't only have to worry about your language proficiency, your ability to comprehend, understand, read, write, type, but they also have to worry about your cultural understanding. A lot of people forget that part. So even if you spent all of your time trying to study Japanese in the US, a lot of you guys say, do, and believe so many stupid things that show that you are not, really aware of what Japanese culture is like. For example, and this comes from somebody that, mind you, not trying to make this a political video, but just being real, coming from somebody that also does not like Trump. I cannot tell you how many comments I've read from people online that believe that Japan is moving forward and doing this, that, and the other for the LGBT. And I'm sorry, but Japan is one of the most, homophobic, sexist, Islamophobia, whatever you want to call it, type countries. They're extremely conservative. So if you think otherwise, you really don't know this culture. And this is coming from people that can actually speak Japanese better than I can, but they clearly don't understand the culture better than I do. even for myself, after having been here for years, I constantly find myself, anytime that I do change jobs, which I've changed jobs a lot, as you guys know, I always have to try to reiterate and explain to people, look, I know Japanese culture, I know how things work, I know how it goes around here, because they tend to ask stupid and ignorant questions during my interview, such as, how will you get along with the Japanese workers? What will you do in this situation? What will you do if somebody does something that you don't like? And it's like, so you're implying that I'm not capable of compromising or working with other people because I'm not Japanese. But I made another video on that. I'm not going to get into that here. My point being is, companies that hire foreigners are going to use you for your foreign ability, which is your native English skills, or the fact that you are somebody that is capable of speaking both Japanese and English. But they don't want you for the Japanese side of it. The Japanese side is just a bonus and a plus so that you can work with the company, whether it be doing translation work or being able to talk and communicate with the staff that cannot speak English. That's pretty much it. You will seldom have a job where you are strictly doing like translation work, strictly doing whatever. And might I also add, for those side jobs people do, they're just that. They're side jobs. It is extremely unlikely for anyone here, no matter how cute you are, no matter what country you come from, no matter how good your Japanese and English skills are, no matter how high or prestigious your degree is, it is very, very, very unlikely that you will be able to find a consistent, stable, full-time job. And the ones that do find that, which again, I've yet to meet even one person, the ones that do, the pay is garbage, considering all the work and money and time that you spent into learning Japanese. So even if you're someone that you're like, oh, I learned Japanese completely on my own, I passed in one, I never spent a dime on a curriculum, I never did whatever. Okay, look at all the time that you spent to get there, though. Is it really worth it to have done all of that and your pay is only like $2,500 to $3,200 a month? That's it for all the work you did? That ain't worth it. So again, do whatever you want to. If that's really your goal, your dream, and you want to do that, go ahead. But look at it this way. Look at how many people want to be on the news. How many people want to be, journalists, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Sure, you can do like side work as a journalist. Sure, you can, make your own blog. You can do whatever. But how many people can do these things and actually make full-time income, stable income, consistent work? Not a lot of people. It's very rare. Can you do it? Yeah, but normally the people that do find these positions is part-time. It's a side job. It's in some small city. They never end up getting the recognition or the salary that they wanted. Okay, well, Japanese goes the same way. The foreigners that do work in Japan that do speak Japanese, they unfortunately normally are not native English speakers, and thus they are limited to working pretty much crappy jobs. Or the jobs that they do get that you would think would be nice, such as working an office job at, some real estate agency, etc. They're at some type of guarantor company, and they're basically just dealing with foreign customers, basically, and their job sucks, and their pay is, crap. But again, that's that's on you. If you really hate teaching that much, maybe this is worth it for you to go through all of that. But again, I personally don't find it worth it, because it's like all of the stress and work that you went through, you would have been better off just learning Japanese slowly at your own pace, like how I did, without spending any extra money. So that's what I would personally do. But again, if that's what you really want, you really just can't stand thought of being inside of a classroom, more power to you. But do keep in mind that as a teacher, if you were to get a degree in education, you're a native English speaker, you can easily get a job at a good international school where you're not being treated like a slave, where you're not going through all that drama, all that mess, where your starting salary will be around $3,000 a month. So just throwing that out there. And there's much higher salaries than that too. You can get paid as much as $5,500. It just goes up from there. So again, it's totally up to you what you want to do. But the reality is there are not a lot of job options. So back to job options. Normally people here that are foreigners, that from varying countries that do speak Japanese, they end up working some type of IT job, real estate agency, or some type of job finding, whatever type side office job. And again, all three of those scenario situations, they're normally almost always commission-based jobs, part-time jobs, and or the salary is either the same, if not lower than what you would get working as a teacher. So again, if your purpose in learning this is supposed to be to get a job, I don't see it being worth it to do that when you can do the same type of, not the same type of job, but you get what I mean. You can do something with way less hours spent education-wise to make way more money, if not the same amount of money. That would be the equivalent of going to college, which they do have a McDonald's, like Hamburger University, whatever, but that's another story. It's not a regular college. That would be like going to university to learn how to make burgers, when you could just go to McDonald's and not have to get a degree for that, basically. Japanese language ability is almost always treated basically just like another certificate that you add onto your resume. It's like a prop. It looks great on your resume, and again, your employer, anyone that you're friends with, they're going to be impressed like, wow, you can speak Japanese. So don't get me wrong, they like this about you, but it's not a need, and it almost always will not result in more pay. There will be jobs that you can get that otherwise you could not get without Japanese language ability though, so don't get me wrong. Like I said, most IT jobs, most real estate jobs, most engineer jobs here, etc., while the pay is garbage, anywhere between $1,500 to just $2,500 a month, you generally will have to be able to speak Japanese at least like an N4, N3 level. But with that said, you're getting the same pay as a teacher, so you're escaping the teaching industry, but your pay now sucks. And keep in mind, there aren't a lot of positions available for these things. Normally, the positions that are available, they pay even less money because it's more competitive. Because keep in mind, especially if you're a native English speaker, this industry is going to be overcrowded by people that are not native English speakers. Because people that aren't native English speakers, it is extremely difficult for them to get jobs as teachers. So they are forced to learn other skills in order to stay and work and live here in Japan because they need visa sponsorship unless they happen to be married. And also, I will add, immigration is a bit biased. If you are not from a native English-speaking country, especially if you don't have a degree, they are a lot stricter and harder on you as far as approving spouse visas because they're not stupid. They're aware of the scams and people marrying some Japanese chick that's 25 years older than them in order to secure that, long-term residency here. So, I'm not going to get into visa talk. I made other videos on that, and I can make some more in the future if necessary. But my point is, generally speaking, there are not a lot of jobs that require Japanese. The jobs that do require Japanese, almost all of them are only part-time jobs, side gigs, don't pay as much. And if they do pay a decent salary, again, it's so competitive, the likelihood of you getting that position is generally slim to none. And then, of course, at the end of the day, the amount of time, money, work, and effort that you put into learning Japanese, it wasn't really worth it for the position. Because I promise you, these companies are generally just as bad as working at a school. I understand teaching is not for everyone, like I said earlier. But again, you might want to try to make it for you. Because remember, your goal, more than likely if you're watching my video, you want to stay in Japan. Remember why you want to come here. Remember how desperate you were. You were willing to do anything at first. Go back to being like that. Because the reality is, the old you would have done anything to get here. Which is probably why you looked into teaching here. Which is probably why you have taught here. Because you were willing to do anything that you could. I feel like people get too caught up inside of this fantasy where they're like, oh, well, I know this person that has this job. And it's like, yeah, your friend or this YouTuber that you saw, they're lying and exaggerating their line of work. They're not making as much money as you think they are. They're not getting as many hours as you think they are. Their work is not as consistent as you think it is. And on top of that, as I've said before, for a lot of these jobs that people do get, like let's say you do find a full-time job, where else can you work though? With your language ability even. Who else is going to hire you? Probably no one. You are limited to that one company. Again, watch my channel. I have quit, been fired, changed jobs so many times. And what I like is the fact that I am qualified. I'm a native English speaker. I have a bachelor's degree in education. I have experience. I can speak Japanese. I have all of that under my belt. And you want to know what? I can take it with me to any city that I go to, whether I'm in the countryside, a major city, a different prefecture. It doesn't matter where I go. It can carry me anywhere in the world, but especially in Japan. Your language ability is limited to Japan. You don't have a degree in education. You don't have a bachelor's degree at that. You're stuck with that one translation job where they're treating you like crap and you're only getting paid $2,000 with no raises, no extra vacation added each year, no extra sick days, no nothing. So sure, you could tell people, oh yeah, I translate. But what is your life like? Probably sucks. And you're stuck in Tokyo. Because now, you can't find a job in Kyoto. You can't find a job in Hokkaido. Or maybe you do have, a job in one of those places, but the same thing goes. You're not going to find another company that's willing to sponsor your visa, give you the same salary, give you that type of stability somewhere else. Your options are extremely limited. So I think that for a lot of you guys, as I said before inside my other videos, you need to think realistically and long term. Yes, it's fun to go to school to learn the fun, type of stuff, the anime, the coding, whatever. I get it. The fashion. But how likely are you to find a job in these fields? These are the people that tell you that having a degree sucks and you shouldn't get a degree and it's not worth it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, sure, a degree isn't worth it if you get a degree in fashion or anime or, whatever type stuff. It's like, look at how many people also went for the same thing. It's a contradiction because people always tell you, to do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And I do agree with that saying. But at the same time, you also have to take a step back too and realize that if you want to get work with ease and you want to have money and stability, you kind of do have to change what you really want and are like to do. Because if that's the case, then fine. I know for myself, even now I sometimes have second thoughts on it. I really, really, really used to want to be a model. I really, really wanted to. And when I saw how crappy models, their work life is, the crazy stuff they do, like, with the diets and the surgery and this, that, and the other, and I was like, that is never going to work for me. There are so many girls that are way more beautiful than me, way more talented than I am, way taller than I am, thinner than I am, like everything that I am not. It's not going to work. It's a dream. It's nice. I can pick up some side job here doing something like that, but it doesn't pay bills. It doesn't. You can't get stable work. There's always an exception to that rule where you'll meet somebody that did it and it worked for them. But normally, the amount of work they have to do to get the pay that you're getting for the average normal model, it's not worth it. All the crap they have to go through. Their life is not stable. You can get lucky and blow up and get big just like how rappers and singers do. But the reality is it's unlikely to happen for you. You can get lucky. You can find that job where you become, an engineer, where you get a job for this coding company, where you get a job at some fashion company, or you get a job at, someplace making manga, etc. It can happen for you. But the reality is it won't. Because not to burst your bubble, be a dream crusher, whatever, but just being real. There are so many people that not only can speak Japanese better than you can, but their talent is better than yours too. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I know it sounds like I'm a jerk, I'm screwed, I'm whatever. That's literally not my point. I'm just trying to talk some sense into you and save you some time and money. Because I was in your position too. Do you know how many people know how to draw? Do you know how many people know how to code? Do you know how many people are engineers? It's not just you. Do you know how many people like Japan? Anime has blown up. It's no longer this little side cult-like thing where liking anime is lame. We have rappers that sing about it and talk about it now and dress up like it and wear shirts and all of these posers and gatekeeping and all of this different stuff that did not exist when I was a kid. Anime was lame and you were a loser and kind of a weirdo if you liked it back in my day. But now it's acceptable. Everybody knows about it. Everybody does it. Just like how you want to come to Japan, just like how you have your little fetish for Asians, whatever is going on with you, everybody else is in the same boat as you. Okay. You're not the only person that doesn't want to be a teacher. You're not the only person that didn't like teaching when they did it. You're not the only person that can speak English natively. You're not the only person that can speak Japanese at an N1 level. You're not the only person that knows 300 kanji characters that can read and write them. You are not special. I'm sorry to break it to you. I had to learn that too. I did. I'm simply trying to save you time and money. So what I'm trying to say to you, because people are going to take this the wrong way, this is not to discourage you from pursuing your dream or your job, but rather to tell you, you need to also think long term. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Recognize that it's unlikely for you to do this. Should you pursue it? Sure, go after what you want, try to find a position. But you also need to keep on the back burner, the more realistic job you're going to get is going to be teaching. And secondly, not just that, remember, you came here to come to Japan. Not to get rich, not to make a lot of money. Because if that were the case, my black ass wouldn't be here either. Pay in Japan sucks. Even for teachers, it sucks. I get paid way less here than I would in the US. I have to do way more work. There's way more stress, and I'm way less appreciated. So with all of that stuff said, yeah, I most definitely am here not for the money. It's because I like Japan, Japanese culture. I like my life here. And for that, I would be willing to work just about any job. And that's how you should see it too. It's nice to have dreams. I hope that you can be that person that gets that translation job. I hope that you do get that IT job. Prove me wrong. I'm not saying that you can't do it. There's someone here doing it already. You're not going to be the first person. But I'm just saying, all 600,000 of you definitely are not going to be doing that. So again, it would be a lie for me to encourage you and be like, yeah, go ahead and go after that job. Yeah, you can get it. That job exists. There's a job for everything. But is it going to be your job? Not everyone's. Maybe a few of you. Okay, so I know this video got really long, so let me just recap everything again. Yes. Sorry about that. That was my water bottle. Yes, you do need to be able to speak Japanese. It's helpful, it's useful for your day-to-day life only. No, you do not need to know how to speak Japanese for anything business related, anything work related, anything social life related. It is a nice skill to have, but knowing Japanese is like knowing Spanish in the US. It helps you on your resume. It's good to know. You can help other people by knowing it. It impresses people. But it's not a need to date. It's not a need to make friends. It's not a need to go to your favorite restaurant on Taco Tuesday. It doesn't work that way. Japan is the same way. That's all I'm really trying to say. Should you learn it? Yes. It's great to learn another language. It's fun. It's exciting. You'll appreciate the, pats on the back, even although they only said it because you just said hello in Japanese. I totally understand. But at the same time, it does feel good. Believe it or not, it does. If you really, admit it, it does. You like it. But at the same time, again, you don't need it. It's really for yourself, not for work. Number 2, you don't need it to advance here in the workplace. Normally, I didn't mention this in this video, but I've said it in other ones. Normally, jobs will actually ask for you to not use your Japanese ability, especially if you're working with students. They will say that they don't want you to speak Japanese to them. As for in the workplace, normally if you're being hired at a company, even if they asked for your Japanese ability, they will normally only have you doing the English side of work. So you would do translation for the job and generally only speak to your coworkers in Japanese. But when it comes to clientele, etc., you won't really be the front, the face of the company. There's exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, they will send a Japanese person to talk to the Japanese clientele. They're afraid of you making mistakes because you don't know their culture, you lack the ability to read and write kanji fluently, and even if you think you talk very well, you probably have an accent and you're not as natural as you think you are. Myself included. I'm not on my high horse. I've been in your situation too. I'm telling you from personal experience. So, those 2 things. And number 3, you don't need it school-wise. The amount of time and money that you will spend trying to learn Japanese before you come to school here is pretty much stupid and a total waste. You'll be like 30 or 40 years old for some of you guys that have already been putting off school for a while. And for those of you that are younger, the money that you're saving and spending to take these private Japanese lessons, you can learn completely for free, like myself, just by living here, having Japanese friends, working here, going to the store, getting on the train, spending time by yourself, and not hanging out with foreigners 24/7. You would definitely learn Japanese pretty quickly. So again, not telling you not to take classes, not saying that Japanese is a waste, it's not a skill, it's not needed, but I'm saying that, it's not a need. It's nice to have. It's a want, it's a skill, but it's not necessary. You can literally get by here just fine without ever speaking or using Japanese. I promise you, once again, I argue 8 out of 10 of the YouTubers that you watch that are living here in Japan, they either cannot speak Japanese at all or they're exaggerating how good their skill is. I would argue that the average J-vlogger here can't even pass a JLPT N5 test. I guarantee you that. 8 out of 10. So keep that in mind. And again, if you're working with anything that's under an N3 level, you're not fluent in Japanese. You literally just know basic Japanese. If you've only passed the N4, only passed the N5. It's not to bash you, but I'm just saying that this is proof that these people that are clearly living here, clearly making videos, clearly dating, clearly married, have children, everything else, they don't have the skills that you're telling yourself you need in order to come here. So if there's all of these people here, myself included, when I first came here, I was in that boat too, who didn't know Japanese before they came here and didn't learn right away after they got here either. Why do you think you need this? It's procrastination. It's easier to say, I can't speak Japanese, so I have to wait 3 years till I pass the N5 in order to come here. Instead of saying, well, I'm having trouble saving money because I spend all my money on fast food and buying clothes online. And weed. Because of that, that's the real reason why you can't come here. You're wasting your money on other things or you're not making enough money. Which is understandable. I'm not bashing you for it. But it's an excuse. I was in your boat too. I wanted to come to Japan for years. I spent a long time telling people, I'm going to Japan, this winter. I'm going this spring. I'm going this whatever. I was a broken record. And I was basically a liar. It never happened. Until I stopped making up excuses and did it. So that's that. I'm literally just trying to give you another redo of that video, a breakdown and explaining, can you learn Japanese before you come here? Yes. Should you do it? If you have the time and money to do it, by all means, go for it. But again, the reality is you're going to end up unlearning stuff depending on where you live because a lot of what you learn sounds super robotic, sounds very childish, isn't natural, and people just don't use. There's a lot of words that you'll learn, like inside of the Genki textbook, that's just weird, people don't use, that just sounds unnatural, both to write and or, to say out loud. But again, people won't normally correct you because they're just happy and think it's cute that you're speaking Japanese, period. But you'll learn a lot just by talking and communicating with people, and to me that's much better of an experience than having to learn sitting down in the classroom or staring at a book or even watching anime or whatever all day. Do what you want to. You're probably growing if you're watching this video, or almost there. I can't control you. I'm just telling you from personal experience, you're wasting your time. Don't take my word for it. Look at all the people that are online right now that have YouTube channels claiming that they can speak Japanese, claiming they can do whatever, or even the ones that are honest that admit they can't. Look at what their lives are like here. Most of them cannot speak Japanese fluently. Most of them cannot read it. I've talked to you guys on my channel. I have friends that have been here for over 10 years, and I'm a better Japanese speaker than them. They can't even read Japanese. I'm always the go-to person. People have to go to the doctor. They need to go find something in an electronics store. Oh, Ren, can you come with me to whatever? And it's like, So you'll probably end up being that friend. And that's great. I hope you do learn it. Please study. Please master it. Don't give up on it. But I'm just saying, don't prioritize it. You need money more than you need language ability. Language skills are nice, but they're not a need. So that's that. This video can go on forever. I've already made it super, super long. So I hope you get what I'm trying to say and don't take this as me saying, oh, I'm better than you. I want you to be stupid while I'm smart. That's not what I'm getting at. I personally struggled when I was first starting with Japanese. I have videos on what I recommend doing to learn Japanese, and I can make some more if you guys would like to. But otherwise, that's the end of this video. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and comment down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and you can add me on Snapchat and like my Facebook fan page as well. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.